The year is 2016, and at a camera trade show in Birmingham, England, one stand is much busier than others. However, it's not the usual suspects of Canon, Nikon or even Sony. The stand that's attracting all the buzz belongs to the perennial underdog, Pentax. On display, wowing the public, was the brand's newest flagship camera, the Pentax K-1, a rugged, full-frame DSLR that went against the grain, challenged what photographers could expect from such cameras, and perhaps, in another way, failed to fulfill its destiny. This is the underdog story of the Pentax K-1. Welcome to Adventures in Aperture. So, nearly 10 years later, why are we looking back at the K-1 and the K-1 Mark II? Well, I for one think they are important cameras that stood out for a lot of the right reasons, but also some of the wrong reasons. If you're unfamiliar with the K-1 story, hold on to your hats because it's a bit of a wild ride. Remember, by 2016, mirrorless cameras were very much on the march, and Sony was leading that charge. Whether other brands liked it or not, the direction of travel was clear. Mirrorless was the future. So how did Pentax respond? By kicking any idea of a mirrorless camera into the long grass and launching a very cool full-frame DSLR that caused shockwaves within the industry. Built around a beefy full-frame 36 megapixel sensor, the Pentax's resolution outgunned rivals such as the 30 megapixel Canon 5D Mark IV and was capable of producing some amazing imagery. The body of the Pentax K-1 and the very minor upgrade K-1 Mark II could best be described as heavy and robust. Using the K-1 cameras is like driving a tank. Tipping the scales at 1010 grams, the cameras feel indestructible and great in the hands, but my word, if you're carrying them around all day, you will certainly feel it. With a battery that seems to last forever and extensive weather sealing, the K-1 was highly popular with landscape photographers working in rough conditions. And as a personal testament to the build quality, I took a K-1 to the Faroe Islands and was hiking up a mountain when I dropped the camera and it proceeded to bounce down the mountainside. I ran after it, picked it up, and guess what? It was absolutely fine. I carried on shooting with it, and that's the sort of real-world thing landscape photographers really want from their cameras. But along with the build quality, there was a really clever design that quite frankly showed up Pentax's rivals. The 3.2-inch LCD sat on these clever stilts, which made it a real pleasure to use out in the field. And should you be shooting at night, there were LEDs to light up areas such as the lens mount or the SD card slot, so you could really see what you were doing in low light conditions. These design ideas made life easier and were exactly what Canon and Nikon should have been offering to their customers. This was one of the very few DSLRs to offer IBIS, and perhaps the coolest feature on the K-1 cameras was the Astro Tracker feature, which allowed astrophotographers to employ the shake reduction mechanism and built-in GPS to track stars in the sky and capture amazing celestial images. How clever was that? The K-1 was perfect for photographers who didn't want or need to move over to mirrorless, but there were cons to accompany the pros. As mentioned, the weight wasn't great. Yes, it's nice to have a good hold on the camera, but this was at a time when cameras were going on crash diets and getting smaller and smaller, and if we're honest, many were growing tired of those sort of beefy cameras. What's more, the AF system, while fine for landscapes and portraits, just couldn't match rivals when it came to sports and wildlife photography. That said, given the right conditions, I was able to capture decent wildlife imagery and often paired the K-1 with the 70 to 200mm f2.8 Pentax lens, a really decent combo that worked well in low light conditions. And while there were decent amounts of lens options out there, the optical choice just wasn't as good as other brands. The K-1 Mark II appeared 2 years after the initial launch and offered a faster processor unit and upgrades to the autofocus, but no upgrade to the video options, which were limited to full HD. And put it this way, the K-1 cameras were not the ones to buy if you shot a lot of video. I desperately hoped Pentax would bring out a Mark III version of the K-1 to try and right some of the challenges that the Mark II presented to photographers, but as we know, it just didn't happen. Look, times have changed, but still, I have a lot of love for this camera. The Pentax colour science is something to behold. It won't be for everyone, but I've always really loved the look and feel of Pentax frames, and there's something about this story that strikes a chord with me. There's no doubt Pentax was the underdog in the camera industry, and still went all out to produce an amazing full-frame flagship camera that offered something truly different to photographers and that should be applauded. Nearly a decade on, the quality of the images stand the test of time, even if the camera itself is starting to show its age. There will be many out there who still use the K-1 or K-1 Mark II every single day, and they'll still enjoy it. Actually, Pentax as a brand enjoys incredibly loyal customers. But what do you think about the Pentax K-1 cameras? Was Pentax reading the room wrong, or actually, was it a masterpiece that still, nearly 10 years down the line, isn't appreciated as much as it should have been? Let me know what you think in the comments section, and please remember to subscribe as it really helps the channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.